first of all, thank you for joining me, starting, our conversation. I obviously have to mention your phenomenal involvement as Nada in the Sandman. So before delving specifically into your performance, I'd love to know how you were introduced to the world of Sandman. Were you like a fan of the graphic novels, or did you got to know about it after you were offered the role?
Actually, one of my very first acting auditions was for SANDMAN for season one. I think that was in 2021. I didn't get it, obviously. But that was my first introduction into the world. And then when I got another audition for Nada in 2 years ago, my sister was a big fan, so I told her about it, and she introduced me to the comic. She sent me so many links about the character and about the story, and I watched the first season as well, and I fell in love with it. I think it's a beautiful story.
And speaking of the audition, can you walk me through how the initial audition process went for the role? Like, do you remember your first impressions of Nada and kind of like her arc when you were first offered the script?
Yes, I got two scenes for the first audition. Well, for most of the audition process, we just worked on two scenes, and yeah. So reading those and then reading her story in the comic and a little bit in season one, I think my first impression was that she was very noble, not just in her rank and her title, obviously, just in how she holds herself and how she views her own place in the world and views the world around her, how she fits into it and interacts with others. I think she's very, very dignified, very noble. But it was heartbreaking to read her her issues of the story. Heartbreaking but cathartic, and I just remember being very excited to play her and manifesting playing her. The audition process in itself was, I think it was about around a month in total. It was 3 rounds. So I did self-tape first, and then I had a recall audition with the casting director, and then a chemistry read with Ernest Kingsley Jr., who plays Kaiko, who was so easy to connect with, and yeah, then I got the part.
And do you remember your first day walking on set for season two, as well as, getting to meet your fellow castmates for the first time?
Yes, it was very nerve-wracking because the Sandman is so grand, and the studios are just as grand, and they built a lot of the sets. So my first scene was also one of the biggest scenes for the character, and I was really intimidated. I was by that time I had read the comics and I had seen the show. And where we shot was right next to Lucien's library, so I was freaking out. I was just like trying to get a peek at it whenever I could. But then as grand as the setting was, the crew and the cast really grounded it. It made me feel really comfortable, like from Tom to Jamie, the director, Alan, the showrunner. And the crew was incredible as well. They were so encouraging of me after every take. Which was invaluable.
And getting into Nada, like you were mentioning before, like her arc is kind of filled with tragedy. So playing someone who is so kind of intense and strong, can you walk me through like your creative process and the research you took for, portraying her?
Yeah. Yes. It was a very emotional role. And what's interesting about her as well is that in every scene, she's going through something completely different, and something that, in most scenes, something that would change someone quite fundamentally as a person. So for these ones individually, I had to do a lot of technical work as an actor in terms of where her voice sits, her physicality, circumstances, scene analysis, her relationship with others around her, which keeps changing throughout the story, while trying to find a through line into her sense of self and who she is, that the audience can recognize, so that there is an arc there no matter how much time has passed and no matter how much has happened, so that you can recognize her sense of self, see where she's lost it or where it's been chipped at, and when she gets it back. Then for research, I looked a lot into like Queen movies, like the Kate Blanchett, Elizabeth movies, which are amazing, The Crown, and then movies where people really go through it, like Requiem for a Dream, Grave of the Fireflies. all things I thought I would never watch again for my own well-being. I knew it would be helpful to get an insight into what she's gone through.
Favorite qualities about Nada watching the project was that even after going through so much trauma, she still had the courage to fight her demons and kind of even confront the person who was the reason for it. Like she's so strong and brave and very adamant about what she wants about like for her, but also for her people. So portraying a character who's always like involved in this kind of evolution and so many layers to her, did you, by any chance, find any kind of similarities between her character in terms of like your own real life self?
Yes, there's a choice I made in portraying her and her pain from my first audition, kind of pertaining to my own cultural upbringing, which was a very unique way to show pain, which is a very dignified way, which doesn't make it smaller, it just makes it, you just hold it and you release it in your own time or with your close circle. But it's kind of like a don't let them see you sweat um, strategy, not strategy, but way of being, which in one way, as an actor, I had to distance myself from or kind of unlearn, but keep it in my back pocket for characters like Nada because um, I think she's so powerful, and um, I thought for her to hold herself the way that she does with everything that she goes through, um, I thought that would be the right choice, and I enjoyed playing her like that as well.
Like I know you talked about the movies, but did you have any other kind of acting rituals that helped you immerse yourself into her mindset and, embody her before going in front of the cameras?
Yeah, I had music really helped, especially right before, like when I'm on set. Music really helped. I made a couple playlists for her, again, for different circumstances she might find herself in. And I journaled as Nada as well, before every scene, just to kind of get into my mind what's happened, how I feel about whoever I'm playing against. And yeah, just to get into her mindset. After all the work and the research I did at home, this was the best way to immerse myself quite quickly. So the music and the journaling.
In watching the second season, one of my favorite sequence of Nada was when she struck Dream. Like it was so unexpected, but I'm very
Yeah,
curious to know what has been like your favorite sequence involving her.
it's it's probably that one. That was my first scene on set as well. Um, it was, I don't want to say it was fun, but it felt very cathartic because I knew the whole story by then. I had all the scripts. I just knew this was the moment that I had been building up for her for 10,000 years. So that it had to be delivered well and it had to feel as satisfying for me as for the audience. And I would say this is my favorite, as well as when they meet for the first time, because I thought that was a very sweet moment. And the fact that it felt so beautiful between them um, makes the rest of what happens that much more impactful.
Yeah, it was so beautiful the way they introduced Nada's story. And speaking about those scenes involving Dream and her, it starts off very beautifully, but gradually, reveals itself to be filled with trauma, grief, regret, and, so much pain. But can you walk me through like how that process was like working with Tom and how did those like chemistry reads and preparation went like for those sequences like involving Dream?
Yeah, yeah, we had a lot of conversations with Tom and with Jamie, the director, and Alan, because how Dream and Nada view their relationship and what's happened between them is very different, like very completely different points of views. Um, and as much as I was there, to portray her authentically and her story authentically, the Sandman is about Dream and about the people he meets that impact him along the way. And we're kind of just Nada, people like Nada are vessels to tell that story. So, in on the one hand, I wanted to honor that and honor how he sees the relationship, which is a very romantic one throughout the story, um, and balancing, her own experience and what she's authentically going through. Um, and yeah, and that balance kind of shifted throughout the scenes, but I think we found a right middle at the right times.
A like amazing entrance, like the first scene you do, and it's like Slapping Dreams. So I feel like what
Yeah,
a way to
that set
make
the
your.
tone.
So what was the biggest surprise playing her? Like perhaps something that you couldn't find on the script that kind of gradually revealed itself about Nada when you finally, performed her.
I think, yeah, I think I had been so focused in my own prep in her own story and what she was going through and her pain that I think I surprised myself with the romance of it all in the scenes and the chemistry. Um, and it kind of brought me back to that story, to the fact that we're telling dream story and that this is one of his lovers and one of the people he considers the love of his life. Um, so that I guess that was a surprise as an actor in terms of how I played it and how I prepared it versus how I actually played it. And then also, I I said about how I prepared how she expresses pain, but there were some scenes where it was too overwhelming, and I thought I just kind of let it roll through me because that's just what pain does. It rolls through you, and it's hard to stop. Um, so yeah, the surprises came on set, and there was some contrast between how I prepared the role and how it would play out when we were actually filming. And every time it was a lovely surprise, and it felt real in the moment, and it felt necessary.
That's a very beautiful answer. And Nada's story has been nothing but very impactful in this part. But what can the fans expect from her in the upcoming last installment? Because I know we see Dream trying to find her again in hopes of like reconciling with her. So can we like perhaps to see the return of Nada in the next one?
Um, I don't know if that's for me to say. I can say that her arc, um, at least in this first part, is um, I guess on the surface it would be like a fall from grace and a loss of everything really. But I think it was mostly it's kind of a story about a loss of agency and a loss of agency and regaining agency after a good chunk of time and accountability, how accountability looks for her and for Dream. I think that's kind of what she brings to the story.
Like she's one of my favorite characters. Like I didn't know
Uh,
because like you said, every episode we see her do something different. So it's
mhm.
really I really hope we get to see her return.
I hope so
Um
too. Thank you.
last and lastly, wrapping up our beautiful conversation. What's next for you, Melissa? Like besides Sandman, is there anything you're working on that you'd like to tell us or your fans about?
First, I'm going to celebrate Sandman because I'm so proud of the role and I'm so proud of the show, and I'm really glad to have been in it. And then I did a play slash film with an amazing director called Cédric Misero that should be coming out before the end of the year. And I am executive producing a short film called A Love Story by Ernest Kingsley Jr. that should be filming next month.